journeys, Americans Redefined will take you on the journey of 4 unique individuals as they face the heartache of leaving their homeland to create a new life in America. They are redefining being American as they incorporate the best of their cultures and give back to the communities that help start their incredible journey.
John was the first Asian American elected to the Fresno City Council and the first Hmong American to serve on any city council in America.
My name is Blong John, and I'm the current City Council member for the City of Fresno and for District 1.
Blong Zong is a council member for the city of Fresno, California. Divided into 7 districts, Zong represents District 1 of a city boasting a population of over 500,000 residents, making it the largest city in the California Central Valley.
I'm not sure I chose it or the profession chose me. I think, I was talking to some high schoolers the other day, and they asked me something similar, and I said I think it was a combination of coming to this country as a young refugee. Like most of our people, the Hmong people coming here at a very young age, growing up, having different organizations, having community members, leaders help our community, help the family to transition, and then working in the nonprofit, in the world. And I think that's that kind of led me to this particular situation. And I think being an elected official, in a large sense, is more of a public servant. So I've been doing that for a while, and I just see this as on a larger scale. That's all. For me, it's the little things that I want to be able to do. The little things for me is have I been able to do the things that I said that I was going to do, work hard for my district, be able to accomplish things, whether it's fixing a pothole, to doing a sidewalk, or to fixing infrastructures, or bringing resources to the city. So I kind of look at those things as some of my measure for successes, and that I sit here in office. And it's not as though I'm going to like to say change the world, but it's the little things that matters the most. And at the end of the day, is making sure that I'm true to myself. Know where my roots are, know where I came from, and the community I've come from, and the community organizing that I've done, and that I'm here for at least a particular purpose. And if I can, at the end of the day, say to myself that I did the best that I can with the information that I have, and I can sleep and wake up early and look at myself in the mirror, then I'm okay. Even if 9 out of 10 people were yelling or angry at my decision, that I can say this is what I thought was best with the people that I've talked with. And that's more, because I think I put more pressure on myself than what anybody out in the community could, because I do have expectation for me. My reason for doing what I do wasn't to become a Hmong community leader, or wasn't to become a leader per se. It was more out of my passion to serve, to try to give back what this country has given us, the opportunities that we had, because we would not know what we would be doing if we were back in the old country. Seeing the struggles, I've had opportunities to go back there a couple of times and seeing those young faces, the people my age, and could look into their eyes or their particular situation and say, that could be me. All right, that could be me doing those things, and so in that type of sense of reality check, it's more of what drives me to a certain level to do what I do. So it wasn't per se saying, well, I'm doing this because I want to be a Hmong community. That would be one of the fewest things that would be in terms of priorities that I would be putting up there if this is the work that I wanted to really go after.
Today, Blong Zong represents District 1 of Fresno, but he began as an immigrant facing the same personal and professional hardships as the people he represents.
I think our story are pretty much the same in terms of the first generation. We were that first wave of refugees that came through the camps, from crossing the Mekong River, ended up in Ban Vinai for a little bit, and then being, in '76, flying over to the U.S. and being sponsored by the churches or other organizations for many of us, and being that first group of Hmong Americans at the time, where probably the population here had no idea who we are. I think they just think of us as another Asian group and have no idea who the Hmong was or that we were involved in any of the Vietnam conflicts. And so I think we have similar stories to many of the viewers that hopefully will be watching this, and so hopefully that will translate and connect all of us as we continue. The first memory, I think it's more of snapshots, snapshots of the old country, whether that's being the house that we lived in, to playing around with our neighbors or with my brothers, maybe the ride on the bike going to the school at a very young age, just snapshots of the things that I remember, individuals maybe, and then the snapshots of crossing the Mekong and being in the refugee camps, and so those are there. It's not necessarily a full telling story per se, but more of snapshots, and I think that's just because we're younger and the times that we're going through during that transition. We were very fortunate that everyone came at the same time. I think we're an average size. We're 9, 7 siblings, 6 brothers and 1 sister. I'm the third of the oldest group, and then my sister is right in the middle, and then you have the 3 younger brothers. So I think we're average, because I know families that are above our numbers, and there are some numbers, with that first wave that are a little bit smaller, but I figured 9 sounds like a good average number for a typical Hmong family at the time. Being a refugee and some of the struggles I think we face similar ones, from having to learn the language, understanding the culture. We all face discrimination at different levels, different ways, and being poor. I mean, and something that maybe we didn't know any better or are ashamed to talk about it at the end, about being on welfare, spending food stamps, doing all those things. I've done those, and so, but those are things that I think that builds character, that you grow from. And so I think the struggles are there, not only in education, but in many of our own family cultural issues, and just a larger transitioning into your new home and working with your parents, and as they learn and try to acclimate themselves as well. I think that there's a lot of struggles that we all go through. I moved out here in '91, right after I finished college. So we originally ended up in Kirksville, Missouri, stayed in Kansas City, Kansas, and then moved over to Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So a good portion of my youth was in the Midwest, and then and then my early 20s and now to my current age, which will be kept secret for a little bit, is out here in the West Coast, and I've enjoyed it, and I love this city and the people and our diversity. That is the city of Fresno.
Though new Hmong immigrants continue to struggle with the assimilation process, Blong is hopeful. He believes the Hmong community will persist and become even better and stronger.
I do see a positive future for our younger generation, but I also see a lot of challenges as well for our younger generation. For those of us that are that first wave refugee that were born over there, no matter how young, to a certain level, even though we may not have the long history there, we still have some connection in terms of the culture, and because we still grew up in a very traditional family. So I think we have that gap, and we're able to fill that gap. To those that are born here or come here at a very, very young age, there's that cultural shift that they have to adjust, and the challenges are different that they have to deal with. But as I said earlier, the opportunities I think are more for them. Because they are more acclimated to being in this community, to this environment, and I think they have a better access and a better knowledge of hopefully what's available to them, and be able to utilize those resources. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword to a certain level, but I think the opportunities are there for them to grasp and take advantage of. Well, I think like every new community that comes to the United States, as every immigrant or refugee comes, there's a transition process. And I think one of the great reasons why the U.S. or this country is probably the best country in the world is because those community, those refugees, those immigrants that come here, we kind of leave the best of what ourselves, of what our culture do. And we hopefully ingrain that and become part of this community, and that's what we leave. And so, you know, there are wonderful things that our culture has that I think that's beneficial to this country. When we talk about family, when we talk about clans, how we respect, how we want to be treated in the social closeness of it, social closeness of what we want to do. And I think those are some aspects of what is being Hmong. That is very positive. So we take some of those, and we should be able to keep those here. There are also some cultural stuff that you know, being Hmong is not necessarily the best. How we perceive the gender differences between Hmong women and men. How we try to play some of the clan stuff, you know, in terms of what we want to do. So we have to also be able to step above some of those our own Hmong political issues and look for the larger issue that is going to be beneficial to not just a particular person that is Hmong, but the entire group. And so we have to be able to balance that out.
Blong Zong is a guest speaker at the 2011 Refugee Summit in Sacramento, where he demonstrated his dedication to the refugee community.
Because it is your story that will change people's perception of who we are. But remember, what we do for ourselves passes away when we pass. What we do for others will always remain. And that's kind of, I think, the underlying thing for being Americans. Because all of us are impacted when we come to this country.
My name is Son Pham. I am working at Asian Resources Organization and as an employment specialist.
Xuan Pham came to the United States in the late 1980s to find a better life for her family. She is now an employment services specialist for Asian Resources. This nonprofit organization was established in 1980 as a way to provide social services to the low-income communities of Sacramento.
The goal of the Asian Resources Organization is to provide the employment and social services. We do here every day, we provide employment program and training programs to help people to find a job, get back to the job, and also find a training that they can learn a new skill to find a new job with a skill that they learned in school. On the daily basis, I am running the two training programs, one for low-income people and the other one is for the people that got laid off and want to go back to school, learn a new skill and get a new job with a new skill. And also I am coordinating a tax program here, helping the people, low-income people under 49,000 to file tax free of charge. And also I do translating and interpreting as well as needed. I like to work in the environment to provide social services, and I love to do customer service. And I find this organization is a place is for me because every day I can provide the service to the people. The purpose, the goal of the organization is to helping to get the clients get better life, they get better jobs, and also improve the community. That's why I love to work in the nonprofit organization.
Like many Vietnamese Americans who immigrated to the United States, Xuan Pham's journey was not an easy one. She had to overcome language and cultural barriers while raising a young family.
My journey from Vietnam to here is a long journey. It took over I think over 1 year to get here. We left Vietnam. I left Vietnam with my husband and my first daughter when she was only like over 2 years old. We escaped off Vietnam by boat to Cambodia. Then stay in Cambodia for 1 week, and after we gathered with other people to get on a boat again to Thailand. And we stay in Thailand over 1 year to waiting for the U.S. to come, delegation to come to interview us. And after we got approved to settle in United States, we got transferred to Philippines for 6 months to study the lives and the culture, American life and culture before we come to New York. So we left Vietnam in 1987 and got to New York, United States in 1989. So it took almost over 2 years from Vietnam to United States. I am, as people call the boat people, that means I escaped off the country by boat with my husband and my first daughter.
Have you lived in Sacramento the entire time?
No, we first came to New York, lived in New York for 5 years, and we moved to Virginia since we see New York as the weather is so hard to live there. It's so cold for me, so that's why we moved to Virginia. We stayed in Virginia for 3 years, then we moved to California, Sacramento. As we see, Sacramento, California is a beautiful state with warm and sunshine most of the time. I was in my 20s when I arrived to this country, and I went back to school to learn English. As people say, English is a second language. I start with the ESL classes. Then after I got approved by my advisor from the school, then I got on my major at college. The struggles that we face, my husband and I and the family had gone through a lot of hardship since we got here. We have no money, we got limited English. And my husband soon got into the job right after we got here. He worked full-time, he went to school part-time at night, and I went to school on and off, full-time, part-time with my 2 children, taking care of them, and also learning English and working part-time too. So, and I am very proud for what I am today, to become today, and also with my family. My husband and I graduated from college, and we have a successful family here. One of the memories that I never forgot is about the language. When I first came here, I was very, very nervous. Every time people come near me and begin to ask questions, my heart pounding like crazy because I know that I couldn't answer the question. I just wonder why the language is so fast and so hard to learn, and how and when that I could, overcome the language. I could understand, I just answer one question, simple question, smoothly like everyone does here.
One of the most difficult tasks for many immigrants, as they establish their own families, is holding on to the traditions and culture of their homeland.
While raising my daughters, I think keeping the language of Vietnamese at home is very important. I always try to speak Vietnamese at home, and also I try to encourage them to speak Vietnamese at home. And even when they talk to each other, I always like them to speak Vietnamese to each other so they can keep the language, and I hope they should pass the Vietnamese on to their children so the Vietnamese still run on from generation to generation. And they are now growing up, but then they still speak Vietnamese very well. I am bilingual. I speak 2 languages. I am bridging the gap for the people that come here, the newcomer, and also the people that limited English, who try to adjust, the gap between the culture and also the language that they need. The Vietnamese community here is has developed and growing every day, and is part of the member of the community, Vietnamese community here. I am helping whoever, whenever they need, and call us to join the project or any activities in town that they need to. My personal goal as a member of the community, Vietnamese community, is try to keep up with the language and the culture, and also try to pass it on to the young and next generation. The young Vietnamese here, they got raised and grown as other young people here, so they got all opportunities to do well in school and in public and everywhere. So all they have to do is do well in school, volunteer themselves their time in public services, and also stay away from trouble. And someday, soon in the future, they will all become the country leaders. One of the hobbies that I enjoy the most is traveling with the family, and I try to keep up with and put it as a tradition, and try to keep up, like every year at least, go out of town with the family, with my two daughters, to somewhere where we can put our time together, stay away from work, and relax our mind, and it got full energy when we got back to work. And that's my one of my hobbies that I like the most.
Though Xuân loves America, there are still some things she misses about Vietnam.
The most thing I miss about Vietnam is how the neighborhood built in Vietnam is different from the way that we have the neighborhoods here. In Vietnam, houses are next to each other, and every day people have their door open all the time. So in the morning when you wake up, get to the door and stand at the door and see outside. People are everywhere, and they talk to each other from next door to next door. And also right in front of your door and around the street, people selling their food on the street, and they have a little cart, have food and selling the cart along the street, and you can eat, and you have food to eat anytime you want during the day. They have many food, different kind of food that they're selling on the street and in front of your door, and you don't have to go any far. You can go to the restaurant, but you don't have to. If you just need food, you have it a few steps from your door that when you walk out from the house.
I am the news anchor person for Balitang America. This is the daily newscast for and about the Filipino people here in Northern America.
Analysts expected claims to drop below 400.
With her career beginning in the Philippines, Santos Relos is a seasoned broadcaster, with experience ranging from radio to her written work featured in Filipino magazines and newspapers.
Since I was a little kid, I've always been fascinated about working for the media. Wasn't really that aware yet of the field of broadcast journalism, but what I really wanted then was to be an actress. And so I went to UP, University of the Philippines in Manila. That's where I got my Bachelor of Arts degree in Broadcast Communication. And immediately after college, I was invited to teach for the college. It was also then that I also got married and had kids while teaching. And one of my professors, also a role model for me, was Professor Cheche Lazaro, who's a very respected broadcast journalist in the Philippines and professor. And she's always inspired me and introduced me to this new field of broadcast journalism and getting to know what's going on around and being in the news. And so I became restless, and I said, I just don't want to be like in the academe. I need to be out there. I need to be able to know what's going on in the industry so that I would be a more effective teacher. And so I auditioned, and got in this field of broadcast journalism in the Philippines, thanks to Professor Checha Lazaro.
Many people know Santos Relos as a dedicated news anchor on Balatang America, but like so many working women, her most important job is being a mother.
As a person, as a wife and as a mother, my day starts at around 6 o'clock in the morning. We don't have maids, we don't have yayas and cocineras here in America. And so I get up and make breakfast for my family, pack their lunch for them. And then when they are off to school, that's the time that I start working on household chores while I am monitoring the news, because that's what I do. I do monitor CNN, the networks that we have, monitor what's happening in the Philippines. And so toward noontime, I get to prepare for work. We do not have a makeup artist, hairdresser here, and so I have to do that myself at home while I am monitoring the news. And so I get here close to noontime, and that's the time that I am reviewing the scripts and the news for the day. Have a meeting with our producers, our director on the content as well as the approach for doing the taping for the day. And so after I review the script, after we have this production meeting, we start taping at around 12:35, and by 1 o'clock we should be done. Okay, so it does not end there, because when I go back home, unless we have meetings here, when I go back home, I once again do my articles. I write articles for Asian Journal, and I also post again the news that we've had taped on Twitter, on Facebook, and then continue communicating with kababayans. And then when the kids come home, I again wear my apron and start working on dinner and doing laundry, and that's about it on a usual weekday of work.
Her journey to America was filled with tough decisions. Ultimately, she always chose the options best fit for her family.
My husband was taking his fellowship here in America. He's a surgeon, and so he was taking his fellowship, and then he was invited to be a resident. So he has to retrain again so that he'd be able to practice here. So we had that option to relocate. And we welcome that kind of a new chapter, a new challenge in our life. Now, thankfully, I was able to get my green card earlier because I applied for this alien with extraordinary ability. So I was able to get that independent of my husband's work as a surgeon. So it's hard to leave behind work that you love to do. I immensely, passionately love what I did before in Manila. I was not just newscasting on television. I hosted talk shows. I have my daily radio program, which I love because it makes me connect with my audience. See, on TV you have script, people, you have just 1 hour and people tell you what to do, etc. But on radio, it's just like it's a one-man show because I don't have scripts. I determine what kind of content I want, what I want to talk about, the commentaries that I say. That it's all about me, and it's all about me making connection with the Filipino audience. So it's something that you would love doing. So I miss that a lot, but again, it's a choice. It's family first. It was springtime when we moved here, and we entered through Minneapolis Airport. And it was beautiful, light spring green that you see around, and the leaves just coming out, and the flowers are out. And it was cold. When we left Manila, it was the summer, the heat of summer. It was immediately after Holy Week. When you come here in America, it smells good, and it was chilly. And of course, you're very excited because you're starting a new life. So basically, those are what I always remember, the first days here in America as an immigrant.
Immigrants to the United States have often struggled to maintain their cultural identity, repeatedly feeling the pressures to assimilate. Jel Santos Relos felt the pressure, but fought to keep her own identity, one that balanced the best of both cultures.
In the Philippines, we know that we are Filipino citizens, right? But here you come to America and you're faced with a multitude of different cultures, over and above the fact that we are all immigrants here. So there is this challenge. Must you assimilate to be part of the American culture and American society? Do you stick to your roots as a Filipino? Like your language, the way you talk, the way you think, the way you raise your kids. So it's a challenge because I personally would have a lot of conflict then. Must I raise my kids as an American? Or do I hold on to their being Filipinos? But they would rebel and they would say, but Mom, you brought us here. How can we be competitive if you keep on imposing the Filipino values? So again, these are very small things, but they're huge because we're talking about here the identity of your family, my identity as a human being, as a Filipino, and if we decide to be American citizens. So these are the challenges, and of course, not to mention the way we communicate, right? I mean, we Filipinos are used to the Filipino language, the way we talk, the idioms. Even us among Filipinos, we have this struggle and the challenge that are we supposed to be like them? Or do we take pride in being Filipinos in America? See, this is not just my issue. This is the issue of many Filipinos here. So but they say that because probably Filipinos are still in search of their own identity. Or maybe it's because Filipinos is just really a reflection of the melting pot of cultures in the Philippines, and we easily assimilate, and sometimes we want to assimilate so much that, you know, once we see Filipinos or still very Filipinos, some tend to criticize them and say, oh, you come to America, you should be like Americans. So, wow, schizophrenic, and you don't know. But I think as we go along and we come to terms with our identity and who we are, and we realize that what really matters is what you contribute to this country. You don't have to look like them. You don't have to sound like them exactly. You don't have to behave like them. So long as you are in one with the American society and contribute whatever you can contribute to make this a better society, then you're okay. That's what America is all about, right?
Though many Filipinos residing in the United States have lost touch with their Filipino roots, Jel Santos Relos is positive that the newer generations will embrace their Filipino and American roots, bringing out the best of both worlds.
You said you had two younger ones. How did they adjust to being in America? Was it exciting for them, or were they?
No problem with the smaller kids because they were just 3 and 4 when we moved over here. It's the big kids, right? Because my son was 16 or 17 when he relocated to America, and my daughter was 13, 14. See, that is a stage in your life when, who am I, right? You're in a quest for your identity, and then you left behind friends in the Philippines and start new friends here. So probably deep inside them, there's still this rebellion. And why am I even here? This is not my world, right? So it could be a challenge for teenagers. But the two smaller ones, I think it's more the mom and the dad who would be adjusting because they don't have any additional hands to help them raise these kids. Yeah, but that is the magic. You would see that these small kids, when you look at them, and I talk to them, they are not colorblind. They recognize the differences in their culture, and yet they are accepting. They are appreciative of their differences. So that gives us hope. Like me, I'm so curious. Like, oh, Katrina, oh, what did your Japanese classmate eat? What was their baon, the lunch, pack lunch? How about this Syrian? Mom, I don't check those out. So we, the first generation of Filipino Americans, we're so, we're so curious and inquisitive about this. And it is still very clear to us that Filipinos, Japanese, Thai, Cambodian, etc. But to them, no, we're one. So they get along pretty well, and they do respect their differences, and they're not judgmental at all. We have to learn from them. My son, he was 3 and he just started talking here, but he does not speak in Filipino, and I feel bad about that. I should have done a better job, because when we were in the Philippines, we didn't know that we're relocating, so we were speaking to them in English, because after all, it's easier to learn Filipino, right? But when we're here, so he doesn't have any memory of the Filipino language, because language carries with it not only language but culture. If you know the Filipino language, then you would be able to watch Filipino shows and understand what they're talking about. And so it is through that you also get to know the culture of people back home. And at the same time, us as parents would be able to share jokes, share anecdotes of us growing up in the Philippines, so that they would also be able to understand us, why we are the way we are, right? And why Filipinos that they meet around the United States the way we are. So I regret not being able to teach my younger kids the Filipino language. But if the parents of these kids, the new generation, would be very conscious about this and would be more proactive and strategically really teach their kids the language as well as the culture, then maybe there is hope that they would still assimilate. They would already be assimilating, especially the ones born here, but feel this pride that they are Filipinos and that they have these roots. And probably another way to do that is for them to be able to visit the country and reach them. So it will be something that they can be proud of to share with a very heterogeneous society anyway. So yeah, but we have to, as parents, we have to decide that. I have received a lot of letters coming from 2nd gen, 3rd gen Filipinos who feel bad about not being able to speak the language. And they blame their parents. And sometimes, so when they go to the Philippines and they have this slang talk and they couldn't understand and they couldn't communicate well, they feel bad about it. They feel outside, like an outsider. So I always go back to parents, be strategic in making your kids learn the language and the culture so that they'd be proud of their roots.
My name is John Chung, and I'm the California State Controller.
John Chung was first elected to the office of the California State Controller in November 2006. He won re-election in November 2010.
Let me give you an overall sense. The State Controller is California's Chief Fiscal Officer. Among my core responsibilities is the accounting for the state. I'm one of the state's principal auditors. We also handle cash management responsibilities. We also do cash disbursement, so it's my signature on your tax refund check. And then I serve on 78 boards and authorities. So I chair the Franchise Tax Board. People pay their income taxes to the Franchise Tax Board. I also sit on on California's other tax authority, which is the Board of Equalization. I have a land use portfolio. I am one of the 3 voting members of the State Lands Commission. I sit on a whole host of financing authorities, a couple pension authorities, CalPERS and CalSTRS, which are this nation's 2 largest public pension plans. So that's a bit of my responsibilities. In a general basis, on a daily basis, it's very intense. It's a lot of good work taking place. So I could be working with the legislature and governor and trying to determine whether their budget makes sense from a cash perspective, such that there's enough cash coming into the state treasury to pay our obligations for education and healthcare and public infrastructure. I could be deciding whether there is going to be offshore oil drilling or not, or LNG facilities, or how we treat salmon at some of the state's public waters, in the state's public waters. I could be voting on affordable housing projects or tax cases. So each day is very different, but it's terrific. Well, my prior position was on the California Board of Equalization, which is also, as I mentioned earlier, one of my 78 boards that I sit on as the state controller. I was there for 2 terms and served also prior to that as the acting board member, and prior to that as the chief of staff to the previous board member. I could have a week where I may have 10 commissions or boards meeting, so I'll spend a good deal of that week up in Sacramento. I could have a week where I'm educating municipal finance officials about local finances or some of the reform packages, so I could be elsewhere in the state. It just depends on where duty calls. Well, I've always enjoyed public service. I think it gives you an opportunity to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. I really enjoy this position because you can be incredibly creative. How do you use money to better people's lives?
As the chief fiscal officer of the 8th largest economy in the world, Chung has fought to make the state's finances more transparent and accountable to the public.
Over this past tax season, my office helped over 1,800 families, low-income and medium-income families, with their tax returns. We're going to help them get over $1 million back. For people who are struggling in these difficult economic times, that helping hand makes a real difference. I fight for causes that help all communities, including the Asian Pacific American community, but there have been some instances where there has been a particular application to the Asian Pacific American community. When I was at the Board of Equalization, we were talking about eliminating publications in Chinese and Vietnamese and Korean, and I said, that's probably not a smart idea. A lot of the growth in California is with small businesses, especially among immigrants who are coming, and not only are they trying to overcome language concerns, understanding tax laws could be another language concern. So we wanted to make sure that we continued that access, provide education so that people who are working hard didn't have to be afraid of the tax laws. So that had an application to the Asian Pacific American community, but we've also done it for other communities. They were talking about cutting Spanish language publications. So it's also helping people who needed access in Spanish. And then we applied it to other communities, whether it's Armenian or Thai. We wanted to make sure that people get assistance so that if they're trying to do the right thing, they don't feel isolated, they don't feel left out.
He was born in New York City to Taiwanese immigrant parents and raised in a Chicago suburb. At a young age, Chung knew he wanted a career in public service, helping others better their lives.
My parents were the first, along with the kids, the first Asian family in our community in suburban Chicago. There were some challenges. There were people who were ignorant of the culture, and so we did face some discrimination. And I saw the laws change. I saw people fighting for civil rights and equal opportunities, making sure that everybody had value, and I thought I wanted to devote myself to making lives improve through the hard work and of community organizations, through government organizations, also bringing in the private sector. And my approach has been using government to bring everybody together to make communities better. I was born in New York and raised in the south suburbs of Chicago. Grew up in a community, as I pointed out a little bit earlier. It's a terrific community, good people. There were some people who made it challenging and difficult, but part of that is overcoming people's ignorance, trying to show that we have more in common and that we're better working together. My parents are from Taiwan, and so they grew up also partially during the Japanese occupation, so they speak Mandarin and Taiwanese and Japanese. My dad also learned German because he had a degree in chemical engineering, and they obviously learned English and came over here. Some of the values that you have from Taiwan, respect for the elders, hard work, and those aren't just isolated to the Asian community. Obviously, they apply to many various communities, but that's what my parents came and grew up with, and that's what they shared with our family.
John Chung discusses the challenges he faced as a child of immigrants in a community where his family were the first Asians.
It was a very different day, and they were starting to lift some of the restrictions against immigrants who came from the Pacific Rim. And so it was very novel. Obviously, the immigrant story is one of inspiration and difficulty. When you leave your family to set foot on a new land, there's a lot of hope, but there's also can be a lot of fear. As I pointed out, there were some acts of discrimination, so whether it was racial taunts, whether it was physical violence. Part of this is, my parents always said, try to do the best you can, try to be open and understanding and compassionate, work with people, and generally people are good. And so you have to have faith in other people, believe that the right thing will happen, and it has. Well, obviously, when you grow up in a community and you are the first Asian Pacific American family, there's instances of trying to bridge understanding. My mom used to, even though she's from Taiwan, used to bake bento boxes. And so when we used to have rice with fish or something like that, and kids were eating peanut butter or bologna sandwiches, you have some interesting stories. I was always afraid of opening my lunchbox, especially when I knew I was going to have fish, and everybody say, "Ooh, what is that? Oh, it stinks or it smells." But later on, those same friends, right? I may go back, and a lot of them like Chinese food or Japanese food. So.
Chung believes the younger generations have the potential to achieve more than their predecessors. It will take their own hard work and determination to overcome cultural barriers that so many immigrant children face. He strives to provide people the opportunities that his family was given.
Well, we're maturing. We've had successive generations here. We've had incredible diversity from people throughout the Pacific Rim. The various Asian countries come to the United States and make wonderful contributions. And we're seeing that fabric being redesigned, and it's very exciting, especially when you think about the incredible growth that's taking place in Asia and the opportunities for Asians, especially recent immigrants, to share their stories, to help America build new relationships, especially on the economic and social and cultural front. I think it's going to be a terrific 21st century. You've had a lot of people make tremendous sacrifices, whether it's economic, whether it's cultural, whether it's political empowerment, to give people an equal footing. And so it is up to them to work hard, to dream big, to make a big difference. And they will make contributions that will be ones that are going to be celebrated by everybody.
Long, Sun, Jel, and John are just 4 individuals among millions. They demonstrate the perseverance and strength of immigrants in the United States. They truly inspire with their commitment to the community and their resolve to find balance between their new and old homes. Like so many others, they continue to redefine being American.